Okay, we're on Facebook Live. Welcome everybody to the December 4th New Books edition of the Living Room Literary Series, sponsored by, as you can see behind me, the Detroit Writers Guild. And I'm just going to put this out there for now. We're going to be asking people for money. I've been running the program on $3,000 for like 5 years now. So don't ask me how. I don't know. All right, we're gonna start. We've got the new books people here. All four of them are in the room. We've got Kim Conklen. We've got David James. We've got Ken Meisel. We've got Jeff Vandee Zandee, whose new novel is out. And okay. So the first poet, we're gonna do poet, fiction, poet. So the first poet up is going to I already forgot my list. I don't know if that's Alzheimer's or aging. I better go read David's book to figure that one out, I think. So the first we'll start with David. How's that? All right. David's new book is quite incredible, I have to say. I really like it. Of course, I like all of David's stuff. It's just good stuff. And I don't have my little cheat sheet in front of me. I do now. So let me tell folks who might not know on and off Facebook and Zoom just a little bit about David James. David James has published 13 books. His most recent books are Wiping Stars with Your Sleeves, 2021, and Alive in Your Skin While You Still Own It, which is the new one, 2022. More than 30 of his one-act plays have been produced in the U.S. and in Ireland. And David also, it was affiliated with and working and teaching at the Oakland Community College Orchard Ridge campus. But I think, are you retired now?
Not yet. I'm retiring December 31st. It's my last day. Pretty
happy about that, aren't you, David?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been at Wayne 43 years, so
wow.
I understand.
When are you going to retire? When are you going to retire?
Well, I was on a phase out, but I think we're starting something new at Wayne State, so I may be there 2 more years at the most, if I can remember where I parked my car. So anyway, without further ado, David James.
Hey, thank you very much. Yeah, I thought I'd read from Alive in Your Skin While You Still Own It. And I'll read a few poems from there. I thought I'd read a couple from Wiping Stars from Your Sleeves. I'm cognizant of the time, so I'm looking at that. So I'd like to start with an interview poem. And I have a lot of these: interview with God, interview with the devil, interview with Samuel Beckett, just whatever. And I thought I'd start with this one called Interview with an Angel. I'm not unhappy. There are perks to the job, wings and free air miles, this cool halo, the softest bed of clouds you'll ever find. Of course, it's not all roses. We're required to turn a blind eye when people sin, kill, or rape. We can't throw our weight around. And God has her quirks like anyone else. I've seen her pissed beyond words, and it ain't pretty, believe me. You don't want to be anywhere close when she's upset, ripping through trees, hurling lightning bolts, wind pulling out your hair. But it's a good gig, mostly. We're filled with divine hope and can't remember what we miss. So they're all the same. They're all the same number of lines, those interview poems. And it's actually a rhyming poem too. So it's kind of fun to do. I'm probably I'm a eternal optimist, I would say, for the most part. And I thought I'd try to, which you can do in writing, right? Try to become a pessimist in a poem, just for fun. Although I have a friend whose therapist told him he was a toxic optimist, which I'd never heard before, which I love that title. But this one's called A Pessimist's Response to Self-Help. Look at the bright side. What they don't tell you is that you'll need to squint, end up years later with cataract surgery and brown facial spots turned white with liquid nitrogen. When you live for the moment, you lose your job and life savings, sometimes your marriage and kids. You can watch those retirement years dissolve into daiquiris and motorboats. Stop and smell the roses, and you'll lose your place in line, miss your appointment, bring on the allergy season with a vengeance. They say you should turn a lemon into lemonade, but what if you need a reliable car? What if you want a house with functional air conditioning? What if you need health insurance with that new minimum wage job? When the world crashes down around you and no one remembers your name, grit your teeth and smile. Try to make the best of it. But even you can't deny. A half full glass is always half empty. And since, thank you very much. Since this is Sunday, I do write a lot of poems with epigrams, and a lot of them with lines from the Bible. So I thought I'd read two. The next two are lines from the Bible. Started with this one's called "In the Teeth of Easter," and the line comes from a Psalm 22. It's just, I mean, the Bible is full of these lines, and I love them. This one said, "Save me from the power of the dog in the teeth of winter. There must have been dogs circling you, Christ, as you hung on the cross. Wild dogs drawn in by the stench of death. They move slowly along the edges of the crowd, their mouths drooling at the prospect of warm human flesh. But maybe I'm supposed to take this metaphorically. Save me from that raw instinct that drives me to eat garbage, to roll in the dead, to smell whatever I can. Every day, I'm drawn into this dog-eat-dog world. I'm down on all fours, howling at cars driving outside my fence, licking myself raw. Turn me away, Lord, from eating the dead sparrow on my front lawn. Lift me up on my own 2 feet and push my face away from the crotches of strangers. Give me a clear voice to bark out your greatness, your undying love to every wag I meet." Thank you. I love the word wag. John Woods used that a lot in his poems, and I just like saying wag when I refer to a person now. And this one was written by a quote from Brother Eckhart. Meister Eckhart was a monk in the 1300s. And he said, quote, "If you do not lack the will, but only the power, you have really done it in the sight of God." And for me, this poem is one on the difference between belief and action. It's called Willpower. Therefore, let me proclaim peace on earth, bread and fish for the starving, hope for those dying and handing over their last breaths. I love you all and keep you close at heart. My children have every blessing allowable, every advantage in the world. They will live long and prosper, as will all those who know them. I picture the Jew kissing the Arab, the Buddhist hugging a Muslim, a father coming home to care for his son. Every knife and gun is melted, cast into a rake or hoe, a cross or Star of David. No one is ever beaten or abused. No one despairs. The fact that I can imagine a world like this means nothing. Get off your lazy ass, brother, and get to work. I suppose that goes for all of us. Thank you. And this one also has an epigram, like most of my poems. And I just couldn't believe it when I read it in Harper's Magazine. The poem's called Techno Love. And in Harper's, there's actually an app. It's called I Just Made Love, a cell phone app with a user-generated map and social network. With a smartphone, your built-in GPS can mark the coordinates of every lovemaking activity: indoors, outdoors, bedroom, boat, car, plane, pool shed, basement, office, school, bathroom, zoo, restaurant, or train. You can upload photos. You can list positions. You can view maps that show where other people made love in your vicinity. Compare notes, make comments, add likes. No doubt they're working on a masturbation app, an adulterer's app, and I just gave head app, and I would do him in a second app. Before long, nothing will be private, nothing personal, nothing sacred. Everything in our lives will be laid wide open for the world to see. Then we'll be free. I just don't get it, why people do that. Okay, I got room for a couple more. This one's coming from Wiping Stars from Your Sleeves. And the first half of the book was written in Michigan. The second half was written in Ireland. I spent 30 days in a cottage, Tom Lynch's cottage, actually 30 days in Kilkee on the western coast. So every one of the Irish poems have an Irish quote from a poet in Ireland. I was trying to let them inspire me. So I'll start with I'll just do two poems from here, but I'll start with the poem that has the title of the book in it. And it's from one of my favorite Irish poets, Dennis O'Driscoll. I found that I loved him and his work so much when I was over there. This is called Out with a Bang. And the quote from Dennis is, "Who wouldn't want to fade out in a blaze of glory?" Explain how to do this exactly from a hospital bed with 2 tubes stuck in one arm and a heart monitor beeping away. When you can't stand by yourself without a walker and your feet won't listen to your brain, how do you start the blaze? How do you bust out in glory? You can't even reach the front door when the bell rings. Hell, It's difficult to lather the bread for your peanut butter sandwich. So explain, please, how do you generate enough energy to explode at the end? Fireworks and streamers, music blaring under the loud bangs and booms rocking through your ears. You want the bright lights and sparkle. You want to speed down the road, outrun the sirens, jump the river and rise up, wiping stars from your sleeves. That's what we all want, right? And lastly, thank you very much for letting me be first and listening. This is a strange poem to me because the title has nothing to do with the poem, and I can't explain why. It's called Becoming a Fiddler, and there's nothing about fiddling at all in the poem. maybe I was just trying to be cute. I don't know. But the quote comes from Seamus Heaney's poem, Mint. And Seamus said, "My last things will be first things slipping from me." Becoming a fiddler. We've taken it as our job to watch the sunset every night. We check the sunset times and drive out to Diamond Rock for a grand view of ocean, waves, and clouds in pink light until the sun drowns in the horizon. It's hard to get any better than this. On holiday in Ireland with my wife. After 41 years, we've discovered, luckily, we still like and love each other. When we were younger, we planned out our tomorrows, couldn't wait for the sun to rise. Today, we let the hours roll over us, watch the day disappear from sight. Thank you very much.
David James. Thank you, David. I just put David's new book in the title of it, Alive in Your Skin While You Still Own It. And while you still own your skin, take it up to a bookstore or wherever you order books and get that book. And the one before that too, The Wiping Tears, is just incredible. I meant to mention too, it wasn't in his bio, but currently David is serving as the president of the Poetry Society of Michigan, is it?
Yes. Yeah.
And, which is quite an organization. And, you know, I remember doing something on it when it was actually Margot's last event. Nobody knew. And then, you know, she mentioned it to me afterwards. And I was like, wow. But at any rate, also, David, what am I thinking? Oh, you're from St. Clair Shores.
A Shorean.
He's a Shorean, and he does threaten to move back into the Shores to take my crown away. But I welcome him.
Okay.
We got to have you in the Shores. When was the last time you gave a reading in St. Clair Shores?
Oh, you know, I think it was on Zoom.
Oh, with me, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna get you live.
Okay.
For sure.
I'd love to come back.
Okay. Yeah. One time you were going to be on the lit walk that we do by the lake, and you were in Ireland.
That's right. That's it.
So thank you, David James. Next up is Kim Conklen Hutchinson. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay.
I have many names. Yes.
And she wears many hats. She's a writer. She's a filmmaker. She does a fantastic. Are you still doing the podcast? I hope so.
Yep, we are.
It's really great. Kim's stories, poems, and films have appeared in journals, anthologies, and at film festivals. Her journalism has appeared in broadcast and print. Her communications work has received more than 15 awards, including the Clio and a New York International Film Festival Award. Her poetry, microfilm, Dialectical Love, was recently selected for several film festivals located in Nigeria and Calgary, Alberta. London, England, Montreal, Quebec, and Buffalo, New York. Kim's story, Thursday's Girls, was also included in an anthology of Canadian flash fiction. I should have led with that. She's our Canadian cousin, and she's wonderful. She's just wonderful. But the Canadian flash fiction, this will only take a minute, clever, from a press I'm very familiar with, and some others might be the Guernica editions that's coming out in the summer, because Maria Mazziotti Gillen for years published with that particular press. Maybe she still is. I can't remember. But please welcome, with the King of Hope, bringing some hope to us all the way from far distant lands, South Detroit.
South Detroit. There you go. Yeah, beautiful downtown Windsor. So
Kim
yes.
Conklen.
Here we go, King of Hope.
The King of Hope.
Yes. And this is my debut novel, so it's very exciting, twice as exciting, right? So thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it. As the newbie in the group, I'm honored to be in such great company. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for allowing me in. Today, I'm going to read a short scene from King of Hope, sort of early on in the book. There are 4 main characters in the book, and we do spend a lot of time, and I usually read from Hartley Addison, who is the mayor of this small town with a very big environmental problem, which you'll hear a little bit more about. But today we're going to read a scene with his protege, Roger. Now, he's a young reporter. Hart is also the newspaper editor, so they have that in common. And he lives in sort of the abandoned motel next to Hart's house. He's a very no-nonsense, just the facts kind of guy, a young man that, really doesn't have a lot of romance in his soul. He doesn't, wonder about the beginning of the universe or whatever. He just wants it all very clean and clear. And he also is very attractive to women, which most of the time just kind of confuses him. But in this particular scene, we're going to find him the morning after of one of the times when it didn't confuse him. So, he's the morning after an impromptu date. So Roger watched the sun slice through the clouds, first appearing as the thin golden spokes of a wheel, then flaring to a brilliant sphere that brought a moment's warmth before it faded again, swallowed up by a cloud shaped like the head of an Alsatian. Half awake, he let himself wander into a beatific state, feeling almost, spiritual. This must be an example of how men created gods. It was only a small step from here to interpreting the scene as divine guidance, messages from a heaven or a hell, and he could see how believing in that sort of thing did have its slacker appeal, giving one a certain freedom from the responsibility to think. The shower stopped. A minute later, the bathroom door opened. He felt around for the cord to pull the drapes closed over the side windows. He never used the drapes himself, preferring the open view to the claustrophobic expanse of aloha print fabric. When the curtains were closed, he always felt as if he were being swarmed by a busload of tourists from across the lake. Don't close them on my account. A well-built blonde woman wrapped in a towel stepped out of the bathroom. I thought you might like some privacy. She had another towel wrapped around her hair. Her face was pleasant and balanced, appealing in its photogenic flatness, the way many actresses and models are, with no outstanding or distinctive features. I like the view. Besides, I'm a city girl. She looked amused at the way he averted his eyes when she adjusted her towel and walked into the bedroom without bothering to shut the door to dress. Would you like some coffee? Or maybe some toast? Just coffee. I have a breakfast meeting and I have to swing by my hotel first. Here. The muffled sound of her voice told him that she was pulling her sweater over her head. He recalled the action in reverse. She walked out just as he finished pouring her a cup of coffee. Creamer? Sugar? He reached for the cupboard, hoping for at least one to actually be there. No thanks. Black is great. They both avoided each other's eyes as he handed her the cup, now that they were other people again, their regular selves. He in his jeans and plain cotton shirt, she in her elegant black suit. She took the cup and walked over to the window. Quite a spot you have here. In the city, this would be worth millions. It is worth millions, just not many people know it. She glanced back to where he leaned against the counter. They were only a few feet apart, but it felt as if she was in a different country. How odd that it seemed inappropriate to touch her. That's lucky. People who know its true value don't have to pay full price. We like to get things wholesale around here. He made a sweeping motion with his arm around the apartment, indicating the aloha print curtains, imitation bamboo furniture, and peeling grass cloth wallpaper. She laughed, a brief closing of the distance between them before she fell away again and looked back at the view, drinking her coffee. What's that? She pointed to the mouth of the bay. It looks like an office building. You can't see it very well through the trees, but it doesn't look like a house. It's not. It's part of a factory. You drove by it last night. I guess I wasn't paying attention. What do they make there? They process uranium into nuclear fuel. It's quite exclusive, really. Not your average everyday nuclear plant. What's even more special is that we're a two-plant town. Uranium. Her back was to him, but he could hear the raised eyebrow note in her voice. Doesn't that make you a little, uncomfortable? I mean, living right next door. Next door, uptown, it doesn't matter. He'd given up pointing out to shocked visitors long ago that the city they considered a refuge was both downwind and downstream. What brought you back? I grew up here. It's home. He paused, waiting for some indication that she understood. It didn't come, which didn't surprise him since he wasn't sure what he meant either. Perhaps he'd been hoping she could help him explain the emotional magnetics that had begun 2 years ago in the middle of a routine story about the EU. At the time, he'd been enjoying a footloose life and a rising career as a solid overseas freelance reporter for several networks, but the homing signal had rather quickly become too powerful to ignore. In answer to her question, he decided to go with the philosophical line, which sounded good, but probably wasn't close to true. Living here keeps things in perspective, I guess. You can always see what you're up against. Admirable, but for me, I'm afraid it would take too much, I don't know, something I haven't got. The distance between them stretched into a continent, then further, a landmass breaking into two, a process he observed with detachment. She checked her watch. I have to run. She walked over to the counter to set her cup down and pick up her purse, searching it for her keys. Do you ever get to the city? Once in a while. I come in for interviews. Oh, good. I don't know if I'll get a chance to get back here. My client was just closing out his mother's estate. She pulled her business card out and handed it to him. Please, call me when you're in town next time. I'd love to buy you dinner. Thank you, he stammered. I think that was supposed to be my line. Not necessarily. She glanced around the room again. Believe it or not, the 60s are over. They are? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. Kim, would you hold the book up so people can see it?
Absolutely.
And it's published in Canada, but it's available, I would think, anywhere you can get books.
Pretty much. We've been struggling a little bit with Amazon in the US, but if you have any issues, please just contact the publisher, Palimpsest Press, and she can definitely ship anywhere in North America. So yeah, she can be. And you get a little discount on your money when you buy it from her. So yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, hey, right. I mean, the American dollar is what, $150, and
more like 35, but still, it's a pretty good discount. There you go.
I like where the pound is going because I do England. So
you do England,
I think I'm thinking about buying. I do have a bunch of pounds here, but I'm thinking about buying more at the low rate for when we go in March. So. Well, thank you, Kim. And Kim also helps put on the Windsor Book Festival, which is really good, really excellent. I've been over a couple of times. I just love Canadian writers anyway. Since we started working with the Ways Goose program, that might have been before you were probably a little girl then when we started that with Lenore.
That was Lenore, right?
Yeah. So I've just always been a fan of their work, and Kim, you're great. Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you so
everything. You do.
much.
The podcast is great. Tell them what the name of the podcast so they can look it up.
All right in Sin City.
All
So,
right.
yeah.
WRITE.
WRITE. Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Jeff Vandee Zandee. Jeff teaches fiction writing, screenwriting, and film production at Delta College in Michigan. His award-winning short films have been accepted at over 200 times in national and international film festivals. His books of fiction include the story collections Emergency Stopping from my friend Bottom Dog Press, my friends there, and Threatened Species, Whistling Shade Press. His novels include The Desperate Country, Landscape with Fragmented Figures, another Bottom Dog book, American Poet, which is quite good, a Bottom Dog. Hey, how come you do so much with Bottom Dog? And no, anyway, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that off air. No, I'm just kidding. In 2012, American Poet won a Michigan Notable Book Award. That's right, it did. How did I know that? Anyway, won the award, Michigan Notable Book Award from the Library of Michigan. In 2020, Whistling Shade released his new collection, The Neighborhood Division Stories. And in 2022, the Montage Press released his new dystopian novel, Rules of Order. Please welcome to the living room, Jeff Vandee Zandee from mid-Michigan.
Thank you. I can be heard all right? Okay. I timed this out to 15 minutes exactly, so I'm just going to go. I got a little introduction to the world of the novel. It's a little strange to read. I'm envious of the poets who get to read something from beginning to end, where you read from something that's a big thing, but here goes. For the setting of my novel, Rules of Order, imagine a wrecked city. The only habitable space in the city is a colossal high-rise building that is supplied by the automated farms and factories on the metropolis's outskirts. Our protagonist, Harvey Crow, along with his militant colleague, Dagmar, belong to the Anti-Collapse Trust, or ACT, an organization convinced that the building is on course for an inevitable collapse. Regardless of cracks appearing exponentially in the lower floor apartments, the building's corrupt co-op board continues to allow upper floor tenants to purchase excessive belongings. There's even talk of adding additional penthouse floors, which would surely bring the building down. I'm going to read from the first chapter where we find Harvey Crow woken by a phone call. He picked up the ringing phone receiver. Even its lightness felt like a brick in his hand. Hello? For a moment, he only heard labored breathing coming through the small speaker against his ear. Then, "Can you help me?" a voice asked, old and raspy. "What?" "I fell trying to get water. I can't get off the floor." Crow sat up. "Why are you calling me?" "Your number was on a flyer under my door." He rubbed his itchy eyes. "We're just trying to inform tenants. Can you help me?" Crow lingered for a moment with the cold of the phone against his ear. "I'm tired. Isn't there anybody else you could call?" The voice sounded ready to crack into sobbing. "I don't have anybody else. Just my aide, but she won't come again for 2 days. I'd call her, but the agency doesn't share the aide's phone numbers." He explained that the agency line itself went directly to an automated answering service. Crow listened to his stomach rumbling from having skipped both lunch and dinner. "It's okay," the voice said. "I'll be okay." "No," Crow said. "I'll come. What apartment?" The man gave him a room number 9 floors above him. He exhaled. His thighs ached from the flights he'd been up and down earlier in the day. "Just give me a few minutes." "I'll slide the key under the door," the voice said. Crow imagined the frail body belonging to the voice lying on a doormat, shivering, waiting for his arrival. "I'm on my way," he said, hanging up. He quickly dressed and stepped out into the flickering dim light of the hallway. The smell of cooked cabbage filled his nostrils. In the darker sections, where the sconces were burned out, he felt his hand along the wall. Peeling paint fell to the floor in his wake. He couldn't remember how many work orders he'd sent to the maintenance department regarding the lighting on his floor. Each request was met with a reminder that the board had made Operation Epoxy a priority over all other maintenance issues, after which his request would be addressed in the order in which it was received. Crow pressed his shoulder into the rusty fire door at the end of the hallway that led into the stairwell. Because they'd stopped working years ago, the lock sets and latch sets had been removed. The door swung open easily and then closed itself again behind him. He started up the stairwell, counting the floors as he went, his legs burning. At least there were no security gates on the lower landings to deal with. When he was 2 flights from his destination, he saw a silhouette descending toward him. "I don't have anything of value," Crow said, as naturally as saying hello. "That's fine, I don't want anything." He recognized the deep voice as belonging to Gerald Lamarck, one of the newest and youngest board members. Crow had watched the open board meeting when Lamarck had been voted in and confirmed. Where most members of the board focused their public speeches on the desires of those on the upper floors, Lamarck had seemed to be trying to address the needs of everyone. He had his concerns about the building's living conditions on the lower floors. Rumor had it that he was not popular with the older board members and was likely to be voted out in the next cycle. They would run a candidate against him aggressively. Director Lamarck? The trim silhouette stopped on the landing several steps above. Crow continued until he stood on the landing next to him. "What are you doing down here, sir?" Lamarck's face was a Rorschach of shadows in the flickering glow of the landing's light fixture. "I'm just taking a look. I've been told that sometimes what I'm being told about the condition of the lower floors isn't entirely true." Crow smiled and nodded. It's late though, sir." Insomnia." "I see. How?" Lamarck asked, smiling. "In this light?" Crow confirmed that lighting had been an issue for some time. Lamarck crossed his arms. "Well, you know me. Who are you?" Crow reached out to shake his hand. "Harvey Crow. I'm with the Anti-Collapse Trust," he said, but then immediately wished he hadn't. Lamarck bristled and then walked past Crow's extended hand. "Well, a good evening, then." He stepped down the stairs towards the next landing, his silhouette blending into the darkness. "Sir?" Lamarck turned, pointing a finger at Crow. "I'm already seen as a fly in the ointment, Crow. It wouldn't do for me to be seen talking to a thug." "A thug? Sir?" "Confronting delivery people in the hallways, the shoving, shouting threats at tenants? No, I won't be seen with you. I have work to do, real work. Good evening." He turned and disappeared in the blackness of the stairs below. A cold sweat beaded Crow's forehead. "But I haven't done any of those things." Lamarck's voice echoed up the stairwell. "If you belong to a group, you are as bad as the actions of the least disciplined member." The rest of what he said cut out in the closing of a fire door some 3 or 4 flights below. A chill shivered down Crow's body. "Be careful, sir," he called down into the darkness. He leaned against the wall. Damn it, Dagmar. She and the others were going further almost every week. Theirs was supposed to be a campaign of information, of truth. Simply inform tenants of the consequences of ignoring the unenforced load infractions. Change the narrative of the half-truths and outright fabrications of the board. Provide evidence from experts about the instability of the exoskeleton, the Band-Aid effectiveness of the epoxy, and the long-shot possibilities of a successful Operation Steel. Edit and publish stories, their newsletter, Crow's Passion Project, to make a pipeline of truth available for understanding the actual structural conditions of the building. Work on the minds and hearts of the very people affected by the negligence and ignorance of the board. Confronting delivery people, protesting directly to tenants, it was exactly the direction he feared that ACT would take under the leadership of Dagmar. He trudged up the remaining flights, feeling none of the fatigue in his legs, his brain on fire. Why would she do this? When he found and opened the door to the old man's apartment, Crow spotted him with the doormat draped over his shivering torso, his body a yellowish hue, some sickness wicking to the surface. "You're here," he murmured. as Crow picked him up and carried him through the hardly furnished living room to the bedroom, his thin arms wrapped around Crow's neck, the skin of his forearms dry and cold. Crow's fingers slipped into the pockets between the old man's ribs. He couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds. "Thank you," he whispered. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Crow set him on the rickety bed and pulled the blankets up over him. Patchy sprouting of a beard grew from his sallow cheeks, the crown of his head overgrown with a thinned shock of white, greasy hair. He smiled weakly. "I'm a sight, aren't I?" Crow touched the old man's frail shoulder. "You're fine. You're just fine." He smiled, looking into the pale blue eyes. "Let me get you that water." He stayed at the faucet with one of the 2 glasses that he'd found in the cupboard, dumping out the cloudy water again and again. He let the faucet run for a minute and was able to get a glassful that was only slightly discolored. He handed the glass to the old man, who drank it dry. "More? No, this is good." Crow took the glass, filled it again, and set it on the bedside table. "In case you get thirsty later." The old man thanked him, covering his hand over his yellowing teeth. Reaching up, he smoothed his thin fingers over his head in an attempt to press his wild hair into place. Crow watched his self-consciousness. "What does your aide even do?" "She checks my medications, takes vitals. It's all I can afford." "How do you—" "Well, I have a walker," he said, pointing to it in the corner. "I was just stubborn. I wanted to see if I could get to the kitchen and back on my own. Stupid, really. Just a man wants a little dignity sometimes at this age. Something." He said he wouldn't do it again. Walker or no, I get dizzy if I stand too long. Crow crossed his arms. "You have no family?" He shook his head. "Never married, never had children." Crow wondered if he was getting a preview of his own old age. "I'll be right back. Are you sleepy?" The man shook his head. "No, I'll be up for a while yet." Crow descended back to his apartment and returned 15 minutes later. Taking a pot filled with warm water from the old man's kitchen, he went back into the bedroom and draped a towel around his neck and shoulders. "Barbershop treatment," he said. The old man smiled. "I'm game." Working carefully, Crow used a dish rag to wet the white hair and then lathered it lightly with shampoo before rinsing it out with the rag. Pulling strands up between his fingers and snipping with scissors, he took 2 inches off and then combed the hair back over the age-spotted scalp. When he finished, he collected 2 handfuls of the trimmings like thatch and dropped them fluttering into the room's garbage can. "Let me see the mirror." Crow smiled. "Hold on, I'm not finished yet." He sprayed shaving cream into his palm and then spread it over the cheeks, under the nose, and over the chin. Soon after, he began to shave him slowly and carefully with a disposable razor, swishing it clean in the pot of water after each stroke. "I'm Leo." "My name is Leo." He smiled. "Harvey Crow. It's a pleasure to meet you, Leo." He lifted the towel from his thin shoulders and rubbed away the residue of the shaving cream. "Can you refill that pot with warm water?" Leo asked. He nodded. When he returned from the kitchen, Leo was looking at himself in the handheld mirror Crow had brought up with him. "I look okay." "You do indeed." Leo put the dish rag into the warm water and then rubbed it into each of his armpits and across his chest protruding with ribs. "I feel ready." Crow smiled. "Not bad treatment from a thug, right?" Leo set the rag back into the browned water. "Excuse me?" "Nothing," he said, shaking his head. He smiled. "You look dignified." Leo asked that Crow go into the bathroom for his toothbrush and dental powder. When he did, he found that the bristles of the brush were nearly all flat. After he finished running the nub of the brush over his teeth, Leo smiled. "I have one more favor to ask of you, if I may." He asked Crow to go to his closet and retrieve a suit of clothes. Then he sat on the edge of the bed, slowly working his swollen fingers through the task of buttoning a dress shirt. He asked that Crow help him with the topmost button. Tucking the shirt into his pants, he then jump roped a tie over the back of his neck and began the task of tying it. Crow helped him cinch the knot up snug just under the bump of his Adam's apple. Standing steadily, he put his arms back and let Crow slide the sleeves of the threadbare jacket up and over his hands to the shoulders. Ah, a valet. Yes, my lord, Crow said, smiling. He walked around to the front of him. I don't know, Leo, looking like you do, you might find a wife yet. Leo laughed and asked him to walk near him as he made his way to the bathroom. Are you sure? He nodded. I feel 20 years younger, he said, though he gripped Crow's arm for support. Standing in front of the mirror, the old man admired himself, smoothing his hand back over his fresh haircut. Yes, this is how a gentleman should look. Crow took him by the elbow and led him back into the bedroom and then to the bed. Leo pulled up the comforter and then lay on top of it. Do you want me to put your clothes away? He shook his head. I'll be fine. I'd like to stay this way for a while. He laughed. In the space of an hour, you've seen me wearing an entry rug and now my best suit. I prefer this look, Crow said as he gathered the toiletries. I'm going to be back again to check on you tomorrow, okay? Sleep well, Leo. I believe I will, and thank you for everything. Crow reached down and squeezed his knobby hand. Leo squeezed back as best he could. Returning to his apartment, Crow put everything back into its place. The memory of Leo's grateful face kept a smile on his own. It had turned out to be a good night. He could feel the wisps of hair between his fingers as though they were still there. Pulling up his blankets, he shut off his bedside lamp and closed his eyes. Tonight he would sleep. He was sure of it. I'll hold up the book.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you held the book up. That's good that people can see it. And I did put in the chat, it is available as an ebook too, if anybody wants to go that route. As I'm trying to do more and more to get rid of books. I got so many books, I'm sure all of us do here. So thank you, Jeff. Then thanks for coming back and doing something with us. Next up is to finish off our Sunday. I just love the way you were reading, Jeff. You look like you're perfectly in the living room. I love it. I know
I'm kicked back on the couch, so
I love it. I love it. That's the vibe of the reading series, I think. Next up is Ken Meisel. He's a poet and a psychotherapist from Detroit. He also practices in St. Clair Shores. Maybe we can talk about that sometime. No, I mean, talk like as a client. He's the author of 5 poetry collections, most recently, The Drunken Sweetheart at My Door, the Future Cycle Press. Much of his work comes from studying how pain becomes healing and healing becomes hope. Being Irish, what is this, all these Irish people? He believes that the pain and joy walk as travel companions, that there is no escape from what we must witness and communicate to one another. He believes that creativity is a hammer and nail inside a forest fire. So he donates proceeds from his book sales to charities as a way of tithing. But he also is a Kresge Fellow. He's been a Kresge Arts Fellow in the past. And there's a really, I think I put that in the Facebook, the link where you can see a little film. They make really nice little films of everybody who wins those awards. So please welcome to the stage, or I'm sorry, to the living room, right next to Ken. Sit next to Jeff there, would you? Ken Meisel. Ken.
Thanks, Emma. I'm worried I was drinking when I wrote that little part, being Irish. It's possible I was drinking. You know, it's always fun to go last because I learned something in these readings. I always learn, because it isn't the purpose of literature, if we really think about it, how to be inspired in the face of existence. And so when Kim's character says, it's good to know what you're up against, I think that's a nice little theme in every one of the pieces that I heard you all read. And so if I'm the baton carrier on the last lap, I get to kind of summarize my little takeaway. How fun. David, your poems are missives to existence. They're just beautiful prayers. And so I have to buy that book, you know. Likewise, Jeff, the meritorious acts of kindness that's so prevalent in Jeff's work is actually defensible in his real life. He's actually a kind guy. So I'm lucky to know him. So I'm going to follow with poems that I think essentially speak to this theme as well. And so my latest book, which is dedicated to my dear friend Joy Gaines Friedler, is Studies Inside the Consent of a Distance, which is a fancy family therapy term, consent of a distance, since I am the resident therapist here. By the way, pathological optimism means that the person is terrified to see the shadow of all things. They are so difficult to deal with in therapy because they're very, very happy while their world can be falling apart. But they're so cheerful. They will bring me a cup of coffee. And so this first poem is called Studies Inside the Consent of a Distance. And in spirit, really what it is a repromising of how to hold proper consent. Studies inside the consent of a distance. I don't think I ever asked a tree permission to touch it. Suddenly this is hurtful to me, that I could fail a tree so, like never noticing its bark ridges as something of its personal skin or its face, and my fingers simply caressing it, free from any deeper contemplation of it, like studies inside the consent of a distance without ever even asking for consent. Or the water's soft rumpling, just laying there so languidly in its sleep-time morning bed. I never asked it whether I could even climb into it, to swim there in it, within it. Me somehow, just giving the vodka of my body over to a lake's smooth lightness in a kind of drunken assumption. Me jumping into this strange water without ever even asking it. Wishing is a kind of trickery. It stirs a naked impulse in us. Even the bird up there above me eyes me warily, like I'd assume power over its wings, its soul. I'm thinking I'm sorry about this, that a bird could mistrust me, see in me that evil wish, that deed to take without consent, its order. Living one's life by the shade of true love is just a study inside the consent of a distance. That we may exist together is to inhabit, to adore, to ask a blessing of the beautiful at stake here. The world so full of its grantings, its faces, its lives. That's all I'm saying right here, right now. All the trees, the birds, the waters savor it. To love is to consent to the distance of another, and then by slow degree, come safe closer. This is my promise to the water, to the trees, to the singing birds, and to you. Those of you, some of you might know, Jeff does, that I have achieved a misdemeanor charge by trespassing in the buildings of Detroit. It's fun to get a misdemeanor charge. You got to go down to 36. The judges do not understand that empty buildings could actually be a muse. That was part of the defense my attorney and I put up, is that the Fisher plant was a muse. The judge was not having any of it, and I was given 9 months probation and a $250 fine. She did not want my book. This next poem is called Zombie Land, and it's about one of my favorite buildings that the ignoble Little Caesars building is now over, I think, are essentially blocking. And it was part of the 2 hotels, one of them, the Hotel Eddystone. I used to love to walk over there. And that's on Park and Sproat Street. And really, I loved the empty vacancy there and the denizens that walked there. And so my fantasy was that somebody, one of the people, wrote Zombieland on the Hotel Eddystone. That could be my fantasy, but they all felt like zombies to me. But what the real conceit of this poem is, it could be me and my selfish desire to hold on to certain ruined beauty, but I frankly like that area better when there was no Little Caesar sign. So what can I say? This poem is a bit graphic in its ending because everybody's writing zombie poems. And so I didn't write a zombie poem, but I wrote about zombie land and the people that are no longer there. Zombie land. I wished you a tomb in the dirt, a place to lay forever undisturbed. One with a star-shaped flower growing up out of the mud for you. Just one flower for your days of eternity. Something living among the many who roam here already remaining dead, even though you all still hang out here, zombies, wandering, forlorn and lost, like rotten puppets on a rope, prepping to die or waiting for your dinner. Either alternative okay by you. I wished you hammers and valentines, blunt objects to kill or love you. All the types of outcomes do you. Across the vacant Hotel Eddystone, someone scrawled Zombieland over its facade. Was that one of you, emblazoning your home sweet home, nom de plume right there across it, so you all could mark your nocturnal boldness as no longer repugnant to the light? Let me warn you, those who fear you will new life here. They'll rip this penitentiary down and your home will be made over for excited others. I know you'll stumble away from here, perhaps to the burned Temple Hotel, the haunted Hotel Ansonia on Cass. You wear hilarity and horror across your face, even as I crawl blindly along the sidewalk, even as you crawl blindly along the sidewalk, munching day-old bread. Even the feral dogs avoid you. Maybe you stand upright, dead in your eternal wakefulness, waiting for me. I wish I wore a razor across my face so that you could see the blades as they bloody up my lips and mouth, as they chew a smiled farewell to you. I wrote this next poem, the third of 5 poems I'm going to read today, in memory of a bar singer I saw in Florida when I lived down there 1,000 years ago. She was a single little guitar player on stage in St. Petersburg, Florida. So this is an homage to her. Bar singer. To become as baroque as this singer, strumming her guitar outside the bar while the customers line up, shove in, mark their seats for the main act, a rock band from Muskego made mostly of bar brawls and metal noise and the fumbled rage behind all envy. I'd have to undress the marked frets of my body the whole way so that I would fall up the stairs, all of me, just like she's going to do in an hour as the patrons yell and throw darts. Maybe we have to fall up the stairs of life just to move from the lower rungs of it. And as she sings her way into the evening's immaculate, drunken approval, she and I'll become uplifted into the hurt, but magnificent, luminous bareness of one note now. Simple, yet extravagant. Isn't that always the ordeal of the true singer-songwriter? To be ornamental, even when the breaking heart's wreckage, so undone, delivers itself to midnight in a lonesome guitar solo. She's a brunette, an introvert, she's psalmic, an improbable opening act for this all-male bar band, especially as she lifts her voice in a plaintive hum singing, just like a resplendent thrush. And she winds her voice around the song's crisp trail lines by a twisting affect all around it. She's deliberate, so evangelistic, as if each word, each one noun, were a history, a picturesque fume, a flame with no flag except that lone flag of sweetness, all of it, like a song I could climb into forever. All of us remember the pandemic. Thank God that's over, So this is my little poem that was written when I bought flowers for my wife one day. And it commemorates a couple of things. It commemorates a real sweet engagement I had with the woman selling the roses to me. And then another engagement between two sparrows. It's called The Angel of the Wonderful. The young woman at the counter, masked in a bandana because of the pandemic, smiled a floral smile with her eyes at me. I'd placed a dozen pink roses before her. She picked stealthily at the faded petals, one by one, removing those dull, wrinkled petals, already withered by long days in the cool storage fridge. And I, because I couldn't help my loneliness, offered up to her a comment that on a brand new day, I might see the smile behind her scarf breaking into a delirium of cardinals catching flame. And she, not missing a point, said, "Oh, you too." And when I complimented her quick paced fingers, clipping the dull petals from each worshipped rose, she said briskly to me, "No unhappy roses sold here. Only happy roses for the ones we love." And something of the air and audience lighted up. And when I left her, my arms full of pink roses right there in love's body, I was the one. I was infinite. Oh, yes. And on that warm morning when we studied the small gray sparrows mating in the clematis, right there in a hulk pod formed like an oval in the tangle, my wife whispered, "They're mating in there." And the angel of the wonderful said, "Real presence always holds the eternal in it." And I said, "Loving something is a cleansing of it." And the angel, empty of God because it was here in my yard and borrowing a matter of days and form, said to me, "Yes, the light of all mana falls like traced God from upper space. It hangs like flora in the open air, and that is the yearning we all feel, feeling it. And those not yet dulled or obliterated by a self consumed by what's already stolen from it, touch it, and they enjoy holding on to it, this mana. And they allow their yearning to test the test of time until they too are won over by the ceremony of the wonderful. And what was a dull patina on them brightens, and this, the wonderful, like fresh grown roses. And the two small glorified sparrows hovered in the hovel, and the one behind the other tagged her. He tagged her oh so gently, and he entered her like a feathered fullness, voiding himself of unstrained light, while the other, the female, like a small oven, the dust rose, moved backward, inward, all light. Thank you so much. This Zoom clapping is so nice. So I'm going to close by reading a poem to another fellow Kresge fellow, Deshaun Jones. He is a saxophonist in the D, a killer saxophonist in the D. I met him through my daughter because she met him when she lived out in California. He used to play out there a lot, and he's since returned to the D. He got a Kresge, I think, in this last cycle. And so this is another homage poem, and it is the poem that will complete this reading. Thanks again, ML, for putting this all together. Thanks for all of your lovely voices in my life. Watching Deshaun Jones at Baker's Keyboard Lounge. Deshaun Jones on the sax, blowing flow. Maybe it's at Baker's, maybe just this side of the ragged Davison Freeway, maybe at the pearly gates. Does it get any cleaner than this? Does it get any more muscular than what Detroit could ever ask for? Any more committed to a just cause, any greater? Brother Deshaun, pulling the slinky, heavenly notes out of the brass horn, throwing them up in a breath, and then pushing and propelling every one of them out, just like clean, clear light, like a fountain's flow. Leaning in close to watch him blow, it seems to me he's polishing a jazz saint's silver halo all over this older plague of dissatisfied darkness. He's just an alchemist, dusting off the gold. He's a jazz saint, spreading, dotting, flecking the air clean. We need him, damn we do. The keyboardists tickling the backside melody. The drummers splattering out a sidekick of snare tricks, scattershot, slack-jawed, lazy, brisk. And the trumpeter, he's hanging back, polishing the song's greater burst and lather with a smooth, brassy sass. The rest of us, eager dwellers, lean forward. Nothing stops Deshaun. He's after the spirit of Detroit. His eyes squint like he's got the alien spirit of the future's greater flow right in sight.
Thank you, Ken Meisel. Hold your new book up, the newest book up too, so we can have a look at that. And I imagine studies inside the consent of a distance, probably at Book Beat, I would imagine, and elsewhere around.
It's out of Kelsey Books, so you can certainly order it there.
Yeah, it's good, very, very good. Thank you. Thanks to all of the readers today, and all of you who came to visit here and on Facebook. The reading will live on Facebook at least for a month. But Robin Eichley has recorded this, and he'll put some titles and names and things like that into it, and I'll make sure you guys get that, and also it will be up on YouTube then at that point. So thank you, Jeff Vandee Zandee, Kim Conklen, David James, and Ken Meisel. I wanted to show something very quickly because Ken will be back and Diane DeSillis will be. Let me share my screen here and with you. Now, where is it? Oh, there it is. So this is did it come up or did it not come up? I don't know. Anyway, I thought I was putting up, yeah, the living rooms next week. In the living room, we're going to do the Michigan Poetry Calendar, where all of the poets in it, it was done by Jan Mordensky and Sophia Rivkin, who passed away before it was finished. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see all of your great faces. So anyway, next Sunday at 2, a host of readers. This is just off the top of my head. Diane DeSillis, Ken Meisel will be there. Cindy Frankel will be there. Linda Nemec Foster. I'm forgetting more than half of them, but it's a really cool thing. It's free. We'll have the link available, the 2023 calendar, beautiful artwork by Sophia, and great poems by for each month by these Michigan poets. So that's next Sunday at 2, right here and on Facebook. And then also on December 19th, which is a Monday, in St. Clair Shores, where we do the literary walk at Blossom Heath, they have built this new beach house, which sounds kind of weird and kind of sexy at the same time. But it has a fireplace in it. It's inside. We're not going to be walking around outside. But there's a beautiful light display on the sidewalk leading back to the bathhouse, Christmas light display. So we're going to make that a Poets and Pies. Mark Andrews' new book is out. He's going to read from it, but also everybody's welcome to come, anyone who hears this. And there will be a Facebook invite for it. So next Sunday, and then December 19th. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. Buy these books.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.